I'm Allie Zendrian, founder of AtoZ Communications, and this is the Brand Stories podcast. This is where we talk about everything from branding to marketing to public relations and communications just generally. This week we have Kristen Sweeney of Every Little Word, which, by the way, love that name, so fabulous. We discuss how thought leaders can elevate their voice in a crowded marketplace and do so effectively, and the difference between someone's personal brand versus their thought leadership. I'm so excited to have Kristen Sweeney on the podcast today, another person who listened to the podcast and was interested in coming on. So that's always a treat to know that actually somebody listens. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
So as far as your favorite brand, what is it and why is that the case?
It's interesting. So we work with a lot of B2B brands, but when I think about my own life, and I find this with clients too, this is a question we ask them, and usually it's some kind of consumer brand that really resonates. For me, I'd have to say Nike, actually. I'm not like a sports freak and I don't wear a ton of athletic wear, but I guess I just feel like from being a child, seeing Michael Jordan kind of at his peak to today, you know a Nike commercial before you see one. They have a really strong point of view. And I think that's something I really align with. They take athletes and really just that aspirational thing that they have, right? Where they're taking people and showing them kind of a peak performance at the top of their game. And I really like that about them. And like I said, you just know a Nike commercial before the swoosh ever appears on the screen.
Very true. Very true. Getting somebody to their peak performance, I mean, that kind of sounds like the work that you're doing. So if you don't mind, could you explain what you do and how you got into that?
Yeah, sure. I'm the owner and CEO of a boutique agency called Every Little Words. We're a content and communications agency. And a lot of the work that we do is focused on an expert-led content approach. So I guess when we talk about peak performance, the way that it would align to the kind of work that we do is we are working with experts that could be executives, really technical subject matter experts inside an organization. And we're kind of pulling out the very best of what they have to offer in terms of their ideas, their knowledge, their insights, their best practices, their stories, their experiences. And then we're finding the ways to, one, gather that information from them in a really easy and straightforward way. And then to weave that into content and communications planning so that it's a really nice way for organizations to differentiate themselves. They've got all this kind of expertise locked up inside. And so often marketing especially feels like quite divorced from the internal reality of an organization. So that's the approach that we use to align organizations. I've been doing that honestly for as long as I've been freelance writing, which then became content marketing, which then became content and communications strategy and consulting more broadly. And it's funny, it just always seemed to me like the most logical way to do it. Talk to the person in front of you and then create the thing based out of their ideas. It wasn't until many years later that I realized that wasn't how other kinds of content were being created more broadly, honestly. And it wasn't until even after that I figured out how to kind of wrap a term around that and use it to really describe our approach, because it's not specific to a certain content asset. It really is a mindset of going in to create any kind of content or communications across an organization.
Nice. So do you work with marketing and PR teams? If somebody wanted to, could you sort of serve as all of those functions? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically we are engaging with some kind of point of contact that is in marketing or communications. In a really small organization, it could be directly with a founder, but in most cases, we're going to want some kind of a team intact. And that person is what we call our content champion. So they're the ones who help us with reviews, approvals. We review a lot of internal documents, pre-existing content, whatever we can get our hands on to streamline this process, we're going to want it. So we need someone who's going to help facilitate kind of sharing information with us, coordinating schedules, things like that. So we have that content champion. Usually they're in marketing or comms. And then we will work directly, though, with stakeholders across the organization. So I've personally interviewed hundreds of executives and subject matter experts. We get on calls with them directly. We're engaging to pull out the content. Our content champion may or may not be on that call, but we're really comfortable handling ourselves in front of all sorts of people. And I would say that's kind of a bit of our secret sauce, is that we know we have a process to prepare, and then we know how to get on and navigate those calls, even when the topics we're discussing are really complex or very technical.
Well, so with those kind of people, how do you pull out from them the humanity and the things that are interesting versus the like blah blah blah? This is speaking at a level that I can't even understand.
Yeah. So I think it depends on really, first and foremost, understanding what our purpose is going in there. So, for example, there's a difference between elevating one individual as a thought leader. In that case, we're going to want not only their technical expertise, but we are going to want to know more about them. We're going to be kind of helping them also build their personal brand, not just sharing ideas, but sharing a little bit more about what connects them. Mm-hmm. That's one kind. The other kind of contribution from an expert is it really is going to be more focused on the work of the business, right? So it's going to be more of the best practices, the insights, the experiences. And in that case, we're going to focus a little bit less on their life story. A lot of times in those contexts, that person's name isn't going to like appear on an article. They're not going to author a LinkedIn post. It's more kind of background for other types of assets we could be creating. Okay. So first is kind of knowing the purpose and knowing how much we really do need to dig into those areas. And then second, we like to start with some kind of intake or story mining session. That's kind of a broad session to cover a wide range of topics. Mm-hmm. And it is going to span everything from what is your point of view on some of the most technical pieces of your work to what inspired you down this path. How did you get here? Who are your mentors? How do you ground yourself outside of work? And from there, we'll go and kind of build a content strategy for that individual. So this is in the case of thought leadership. And that's going to align with the company objectives, company level messaging, but also have some of the unique flair of what they're really passionate about. So, think about a Venn diagram. There's some overlap, but it's not two fully overlapping circles because we don't want them to just sound like the corporate talking points. We want them to really sound like themselves. The second thing we do is we really like to get on and have a conversation. So we do record our calls and it helps us transmit the information to our internal team, recall and go back to things. But I think it's important to let people be really candid, especially in those opening conversations. Mm-hmm. So I know some folks will advocate for take every conversation and then turn it into video content. We sometimes do that when possible, but I would rather get a quality conversation first. If that means they're disclosing information or being able to say things just as they're coming out of their head versus feeling like they need to censor themselves or be really sort of polished because they might end up on video. This might end up on a social post or something. Yeah. So it's really saying, let's just have the conversation, be as honest with us as you can. Mm-hmm. We can go edit and refine and take things out later on. But we'd rather have all of that context to start.
That's interesting. So you can produce video content. Can you guys do podcasts? And then as far as written content, so are you taking anything that then would be placed in a publication or is it for blogs? Where is your content found?
Yeah, good question. So our core focus is our team is built around writing really high quality, long form content. That can be blogs, case studies, white papers, ebooks. We do write content that is eventually placed in bylines. We've got some folks on Substack, LinkedIn articles. We also do some LinkedIn content for executives as well. So a wide range of places where that content shows up. Writing is our primary. For videos, we can work with short clips. We've got some capabilities. And if video is a heavy focus, we could always bring in a partner to work with. It's funny you mentioned podcasts. Just today, as of date of this recording, our own internal podcast has just launched. So I guess I will say we have exactly one rep of Launch Jacob's podcast from start to finish. And the work that's involved in that. So not an offering for our clients at the moment, but something we've had a lot of fun pulling together for ourselves.
Well, congratulations. And I feel like the first one is the hardest. If you've listened to my first one, God bless Mike Lane for even putting up with me.
Think about it. You never have a first time again,
Exactly. Yeah. So you said something interesting before about the personal brand. And I feel like that's becoming increasingly more important now. And whether that's people deciding to craft that for themselves or just sort of letting the market or outside forces or whatnot dictate what that is. Do you feel like more people are going to take ownership of that moving forward?
I do. I think in general, that aligns with a trend we're seeing where unfortunately the job market doesn't feel as stable for people as it once has. And I'm someone I've always been on my own. I went from a freelancer to an agency owner. So I've always dealt with that particular set of challenges and struggles. And I've never really had the relative comfort and stability of someone else giving me my paycheck. But what I see and observe is that it doesn't feel like it offers that same level of comfort. And so I think a lot of folks are thinking about consulting or recognizing that might be a possibility for them one day. And therefore they're looking to build themselves up. For us, I'll just note, like, we differentiate a little bit between personal brand and thought leadership. And I'll say it this way, like an actor has a personal brand, right? Julia Roberts has a personal brand.
Yes.
She could also be doing things related to thought leadership, but they're two separate things. Your personal brand is really about you and who you are. And it's, if I post a picture of me and my kids, like, that's my brand, right? I'm positioning myself as a mother. Thought leadership is going to be more about my ideas in a professional context. I think there's room for both and to varying degrees. And you see people kind of doing the full spectrum of what that looks like across social media in particular. But yeah, I do think that more people have an eye to, even if I'm secure today, there might be a time when I want to go out on my own, or circumstances might put me in that position. And so I want to be prepared and kind of have that foundation established.
So how do you engage with your clients? Do they find you through any particular manner? Is there something that differentiates you guys that, causes people to come to you in particular?
A lot of how we work is still very trust-based, is still referrals and word of mouth and connections. I would say the expert-led content approach is definitely something that is unique to us and the way that we approach, again, across all different types of content. And the other thing that we get a lot of feedback on from clients is honestly just really high quality of writing. And I cringe a little to say that because, one, that's something that's kind of subjective, of course. You say you're great at something like that, and it's easy to kind of go in and poke holes in it. And every sort of framework for a value proposition would tell you, don't just sell on we're just better. What I can say is we have a really well-developed process for doing that effectively. And a lot of the feedback we get from folks is, I work with my big agency and they're great at many things, but when it comes to the actual pieces, they don't get it. I spend a lot of time rewriting. We work with smaller agencies that say, we can distribute a lot of this work to our team, but when it comes to really complex subjects, it's the owner of the business still doing most of the writing, but they're able to hand it off successfully to us. So that's one of the things that we consistently get feedback on. And then I say the other thing is that we're really have a strong project management aspect to what we do. Our mission is to share great ideas with the world. And so the great ideas part, I think we've talked about, but the sharing with the world means that it has to get out there. It has to be published. These projects have to cross the finish line. And so whether or not we're the ones actually hitting publish on something, we think of ourselves as the drivers of our projects, and we try and take some of that invisible work off our clients' plates, because creating content has a lot of moving pieces that can eat up time and eat up energy. And so where possible, we try and take responsibility for those as part of our engagements.
Yes. So exactly to that point, I work with primarily financial advisors and fintech executives, and I think some of them would say some of the same thing. This is just like so time consuming. In addition to coming up with somebody's retirement plan and this and that, now you want me to do content too? Like, come on. Yeah. So how do you try to explain to them, A, that the process is worthwhile, and B, that maybe it's not the time suck that they think that it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that the buy-in piece is critical. And that's really got to come from leadership, right? So for example, if you're being told that you need to focus, like if we're being told, hey, let's go into the organization and talk to all these experts, but leadership is sending the signal that says, if it's not billable, I don't want you doing it. Well, guess who's not going to give us their time, right? So it's gotta be aligned from the top. And it is cross-functional, and it is contributions that are outside of somebody's standard job description. I'm hopeful that maybe over time that will change, and this awareness of contributing to content and initiatives will kind of be embedded in what's expected of somebody, right? Yes. But I think it usually is setting up with the content champion, and as needed, preparing them with the information needed to help understand, like, here's what's going to be asked of you. Here's why it really matters. Here's why it's got to be you. And that's, flattering, right? Like, you're the one who has the information that we need. And then I think it's also demonstrating that we are going to be really efficient with their time. So preparing them in advance. Here are the questions. Here's how much we're going to need from you. You don't have to review the questions at all. Some people certainly don't. You can write in your answers in advance of our conversation. That happens too, right? And kind of everything in between. But every step of the way, keeping in mind that these folks aren't in content. They're not in communications. And so they don't know what to expect. This is really brand new for them. So I think the more you can set expectations and help them understand what's coming next is going to be really valuable. And then that goes same for laying out their time commitment. Most of the time, they're on a single call with us, and then they're going to have some role in the review and approval. In some cases, they are the final sign off. In other cases, there's someone else who's able to give final sign off, and it's more of a, this is your time window. If you have feedback, go ahead and put it in. The yes, which I like when possible. But I think those are the ways that really we can help make them feel like their time is valued. And the other thing is us coming in prepared, right? So obviously there's something they're supposed to tell me that I don't know yet. But I don't want to go in and have it be a 101 class on their topic, right? I need to be able to speak at a certain level with them and engage so that I can get more of the complicated information, more of the nuance, the stuff only they know out. So when we can demonstrate that, I think that builds a lot of trust as well in the process.
That's great. So how, if at all, do you feel like AI has changed what you've done?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we actually published a white paper on this recently. Be happy to send it over. I was feeling like we had been experimenting with AI. We'd been using it on our team. And I just kept seeing all this information being like, you're not doing enough with AI. Right. Heavy on the fear factor, light on the details. So I was like, hey, be the change you want to see in the world. We're going to publish a paper that walks through step by step how and where we use AI in our content process, and where, frankly, we don't use it at all, and why. And some places that we've tried it and decided it actually made more work for us or made things more difficult. So I would say for us, it's definitely a tool we use at multiple points. It's across a tech stack. There's several different platforms we use, some of which aren't LLMs that we've been using for a long time. Grammarly's got some AI capabilities, for example. Software like this that can record and generate a transcript, incredibly helpful. So some things that we use there. I would say in general, it's helpful for when you're stuck, for capturing large amounts of information, and a little bit of ideation for us. Those are the places we found it to be most efficient. So we like it. We're capable of working without it, but certainly we incorporate it in our workflows now.
Nice. Do you feel like the kind of content that you're generating has changed as a result of AI, with some people saying with AEO, you need to have more chunk, answers a direct question kind of content versus like, look, let's just write a beautiful article and see what happens?
Not necessarily, because I would say what we're seeing a lot with AEO is that's kind of folks shifting from SEO heavy to a different approach. So a lot of the content we're creating anyway wasn't necessarily intended for that kind of distribution channel. And certainly we have a partner, an SEO, AEO, GEO, whatever you want to call it. Still, I think we're all still deciding together. That can really advise us if that's a heavy focus for organizations. But the truth is sometimes organizations come in and say something like our website is like, either we need a distribution channel, we want to email these newsletters, we want to share this on LinkedIn. People are coming to our website after they've met us, right? They've got a business development motion going on as well, which I think in B2B is really smart, especially just given where we are today. I hope everyone is out there doing some kind of business development and not just following the, if you build the content, they will come kind of model. So in those cases, I think it's a trade-off, right? And it always has been, of this idea of, do you want really differentiated messaging, or do you want something that is generic enough to answer queries? We tend to work with clients who want more of the differentiation, I would say, that's a bigger focus for them, not the only focus, but that's the side we tend to land on because of how we work.
Yeah, makes sense. So anybody who's listening to this who says either A, I want to get into content, which if you're not in it already, please do jump in, or B, I want to get my content to a better place, what do you feel like are some first few steps that they could take?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think it depends a little bit who you are, but I would say if you're marketing communications, start talking to some of the key subject matter experts in your organization, especially at leadership level, and see if you can get more buy-in for this kind of initiative. If you are a leader thinking, this sounds great, I'd really like to be out there, I have a lot I'd like to share, go talk to your marketing or communications team, because they can help you with that structure, right? Your ideas are critical, but there's a whole lot of expertise on the marketing and comm side, and we shouldn't overlook that. I think an expert just kind of trying to strike out for themselves might get overwhelmed. So talk to each other. I would say that's a really key part. And then for my experts, for my executives, find some way that's going to work for you consistently to keep track of your ideas, because they're going to happen when you're in the shower, when you're walking your dog, when you're on a run, all sorts of places. It could be a note on your phone. It could be a little notepad. You can do voice memos. Speaking of AI, like there are a plethora of ways that you can get this information all into one place, but you want to be able to do it a little bit more real time when possible, because that's when the ideas come up and you can always revisit and refine them later, rather than sitting down with a blank page and saying like, I wonder what I want to think about now. So that would be my second piece of advice, really.
Love it. To be honest, I'm one of those people, every time in the shower, I'm like you knew that it was going to happen the second that you turned on the water. Like, oh, brilliant 100%. Idea. Why is it in the shower?
Yeah. You know what I tell myself though? I do believe this, like, if it's good enough or right, it'll come back if it's pressing enough. So you kind of got to like eventually let it go a little bit too and say, for me, it's in a yoga class. It'll be 3/4 of the way through and I'll be like, oh my gosh, this article topic. And I'm like, yeah, that's not happening. But if it means a lot, it'll come back. It's not fully lost.
Yes. Well, we'd love to also support your podcast. What's the name of it in case any listeners would like to tune in?
Yeah, thanks. It's called Expertly Said. So it's a podcast on the art and impact of communication. And I'm talking with folks who in some way are using communication professionally. That's a lot of people with communications in their job title, of course, but some other kind of more creative ways that they're using communication as well.
Well, best of luck to you and thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. It was great being here with you.